These are one of my absolute most used and favorite art supplies. These are the StoryTime paint pens. I've got two of my sets here, the Wonderland set with all these beautiful colors. So we've got Mad Hatter, Pool of Tears, Alice Blue, Cheshire, and Queen of Hearts. And the Snow Queen set, which has Snow White and Evil Queen, my black and white. So when you first get your paint pens, we've got pigment and we have the medium that carries it and turns it into an acrylic paint. These two things need to be mixed if the pens have been sitting for anything longer than a few hours. So these are brand new and I really do want to give it a really good shake the first time that I use it. So I really want all of that to mix. Now, because this comes in a little envelope and I'm going to be using all of them, and this is a brand new set, I want to get it all together, I can, to save time, shake the whole packet. It really is a good idea to give them a really good shake the very first time that you use them. You really want to mix up all of that delicious pigment and ink. If you go to shake them, if your pens have been sitting there for a while and you can't hear that there's a ball bearing in there, which as soon as you shake it, you can feel that. If you can't feel the ball bearing moving, if there's no noise happening, that means that the ball bearing is just stuck in the pigment. It's not a big deal. Get that moving. And the reason we want to shake that up and not use it just straight as is you'll end up just using the clear medium. And so you'll get a very watery effect as you prime the nib, which is what we're going to do next. So this is a brand new paint pen, StoryTime paint pen. And what I'm going to do is push the nib in. I don't want to be too rough with it because I don't want to misshape the nib itself. But when that is pushed in, the valve is open and ink can flow through there. So I'm just allowing that to come down. I'm just going to pull the nib out a little so you can see the ink, how it's coming down. So I've got this background here I've drawn with my magic wands on top of a background of incredible inks that I've sprayed, splashed, painted, and I've also used some of my various acrylic paints in here, just so you know what I've got going on in the background. And I want to add some more details, and I find that the StoryTime paint pens are the perfect way to do that. So I've got some little dots happening already, so why not just add a little bit of decoration, a little bit of detail while I'm waiting. And I just love this beautiful teal blue on all of these other bright colours. The paint pens have an opacity to the ink because they are pigment based. Let's get another one ready. I'm just going to shake it again, even though we did just shake it. Let's make sure. If you are feeling a little bit fancy, you can hold two down together. So I'll show you that. Have I done this one? No. So it's especially important that they're both really shaken up, especially this first charging of them. So what I'm doing here is just showing you how I have the two going at once. And another important point is we really want the lids on when we're shaking them, obviously the lid off when we're using them, and then don't leave them sitting on the table with the lids off. When you do put them back, just you hear that click as they're put away. We really want them to be put away properly. If you leave the lid off, because this is an acrylic ink, if you leave it out in the air, it will dry, and we don't really want that because then it will harden and ink won't be able to flow through the nib anymore. And what you can do, remove the nib. So I'll show you, that's the nib in the small size and this is the nib in the larger size. So take the dried out nib, soak it in some warm water and try and loosen the acrylic that's dried on it. You can also use rubbing alcohol. That is a solvent and that might also budge the dried out acrylic but it is just easier and better to make sure you seal your pens properly. After you've taken a few minutes to set up your beautiful StoryTime paint pens, you can get decorating. So of course these are going to work really, really well on paper, on canvas, but you can use them on all sorts of other surfaces. It's just a matter of experimenting with them. Anything that accepts acrylic paint, basically. When I sit down to start a creative session, I very, very often start with this process, exactly what I'm showing you here on screen, with my StoryTime paint pens, because it just is a way of entering that creative zone, playing with color. And I'm just usually working in an art journal. This is a little handmade art journal that I'm working in, and I doodle exactly what I'm doing here, making shapes, looking at different colors on colors, and just finding my happy space and getting into warming up into my creativity. In this example, I'm working on an extremely busy background that's made with the incredible inks and paint and all sorts of other things. So to help me get a subject to stand out, but I want to still keep all of the color outside in the background and in the subject, very often I'll do exactly what I just did then, put a white line all the way around it. Sometimes if you've got lots of watercolory or water-based inks, incredible inks, dye-based inks, all sorts of other different things, sometimes they will resuscitate and come up and color the StoryTime paint pen ink. So all that means if I really want a more bright white outline, I just go over it a couple of times and build the white opacity up. And I also use the StoryTimes as colourful erasers, or ways to help me control what's going on the page. So in this example, I've got some white paint spots in behind her eye, on her hair, on the cheek, and I felt that they were really competing with the main event or with the main subject, you know, with her eyes and so forth. So by putting a little bit of the Queen of Hearts pink, which mimics the pinks in the rest of the piece, I'm just putting that over there, and then I'm also using a water brush with a little bit of water in it just to spread the StoryTime ink out a little and just knock back areas that I don't want the eye to focus on. I'm using the Black Evil Queen StoryTime pen just to really amp up the blacks, which I originally drew in one of my License to Quill waterproof pens. To add dimension to my eyes, I like to add a little shadow straight under that lash line, and I love to use purples, especially this beautiful purple, the Cheshire Cat. So I've added a little bit in there, and then I'm using one of my aqua brushes just to spread that purple, just to soften it a little, just straight under the eye, so it's a very soft tone. I just want to quickly show you that when you put the StoryTime ink down, you do have a little tiny bit of open time where you can use it watercolor-like effect, but that doesn't last long. You do have to be very quick. But if you want to add a little bit of a shadow under your paint marker line, you can do that. So just to show you again, when it's first dried, you can add water. Once it's dried though, which doesn't take very long depending on the weather, it's completely permanent. It is an acrylic ink. I also just wanted to show you a little fun fact. As with most of my art supplies that I design, these have a matte finish, and matte finishes to me are very important because it means you can easily work over them. You're never painting yourself into a corner. So I'm using some of my magic wands over these, which are a nice soft colored pencil, and I'm just wanting to show you that you can keep drawing on them, keep having fun with them. Just make sure that they're dry before you start adding other things. And of course you've already noticed that there are two pens in each color. So you've got a broad nib and a fine nib, and this is to help you get variety in your lines. You can see from just that quick little two strokes that I did there, what a difference that makes when you have that variety of line. That's how I feel anyway.
Of course, I use the whites probably the most. So this is the colour Snow White. And I use both the broad and the fine, and I love doing all my highlights with them. Very often I put the highlight down and then dab it with my finger just to soften the edges. I like to add this beautiful purple, the Cheshire purple. I use that a lot as a shadow colour, and well, I use all the colours. This is just a fun little thing I wanted to show you in the video. So I've got this really bright, crazy background, and to try and make my subjects stand out from the background, I thought, oh, what happens if I add an overlay of pattern all over the whole thing? So I just added these little white dots everywhere except on her. And I think that suits the crazy background. It leaves all of the beautiful color there, which is what I'm loving about this. But also I can see her more clearly. But that has made those white spots in her hair stand out even more. So I'm using my Queen of Hearts paint pen again to just knock that back, and then adding a little bit more paint just to... I'm looking at what's already inside the subject and just trying to emulate that so it just looks different to the background, so I can keep all those beautiful colors but I can still get some separation. Fun. I'm just wanting to show you just some fun stuff as I'm working. And you don't all have to be using your StoryTime paint pens just to draw subjects or people or whatever. You can also just add color to your journal pages and art, or whatever it is that you're working on. I love working in an art journal, so I'm always thinking of art in terms of art journals, but that's just because it's coming from me. I'm the one talking and I have to speak from my own experience, right? But I'm just letting this part of the video run in real time just so you can see that I just potter along. I just adding little dots, and I find this process so relaxing, and it's a peaceful feeling that I get. So again, I've got a background. This was from a in-person workshop that I taught at the Jane Davenport headquarters, or the JDHQ, in just outside of Byron Bay. And we used incredible inks, paint, I'm with stencils, with my jelly plate, all sorts of different techniques that I was teaching, but just to have these lovely, loose, bright backgrounds and to have fun. And then the next part, a next process, although you don't have to do this process, it's not a technique of step 1, step 2, step 3 or anything, but I'm just sharing with you just some things that you can do. So I've got my beautiful background, and then I'm adding these extra details in the StoryTime pens. Well, mainly because it's fun, but it also just adds more detail and layers to my artwork. I also love just playing with the different color combinations and seeing where that takes me. Just going to bump the speed up a little bit so it doesn't get too boring. But I do just want you to see how I use these things as a play tool. And as with a lot of my art, and not all art is created in the same way, not at all, but I'm just saying for me, this is just such a great tool for mixed media because it works on... they work on just about everything, and they're a very convenient way of adding more color. Like I said, they've got that little bit of, they do have opacity with them, so you can block things out. You can experiment with color in a very quick and easy way. They make me feel creative, and they make me enjoy creating whenever I use them. I mean, just look at the black, just that nice little blend of black on all of these beautiful colors. If I had my paint and I did that, it would be a far more dramatic gesture if I'm doing it with paint and a paintbrush. When I'm using my StoryTime paint pens, I feel like this is just manageable steps. I know they've got their own magic to them, and I just wanted to share that with you. I've got some more videos that I will put together for you about the gorgeous pens. Keep your eyes peeled for them, and I hope you enjoyed that. Bye.